Well, my name is Natalia Alvarez, and I'm a story coach or consultant, and I translate purpose into a story. And my role in Grey Hope Bay has been that, helping Fiona to translate the vision into a story that people can engage and wanted to be part of.
Absolutely fantastic, because we've been actually working together for a number of years now, and it's been a journey to really get to the root of what it is this project is trying to achieve. And what would you say was the sort of key moment in the project when we started to really to get to the core of the story?
I think for me, we'll be back at the moment in which nearly everything was lost. And I think that was the key moment. And you remember
Yes.
that moment. It was a hard moment. And I think when you just face a moment like this, that maybe you can explain a little bit about what it was for you. But the perspective was that it was not funding, and nearly Grey Hope Bay as a project could be just done. So when you face the reality like this and the question, should I just continue or should I give up? You really need to go very deep in order to answer that question. And I think that that was a key moment in the project, because you decided that you wanted to go deep into that question, and the way you emerge, it was, with the story was there, but you embodied the story in a way that was very, very powerful and allowed you to achieve in a short period of time what you haven't done before.
Yeah, and I think in that moment it was something that you actually said to me that allowed me to get to that understanding, which was, if you want to, you can, if you want to step away from this project, you need to look at how you step away in a way that's not throwing it in the bin, but that's putting it down in a way that somebody else could pick it back up. It made me totally reframe how I should be communicating this project, because it had to be something that somebody else, or it was, that could be picked back up. And I think that's when I started to work out how I had been dealing with the project up until that point, and a way in which I could start to open it up and invite more people to actually join me and support me in the project. Because again, at that time, I was holding on to it quite tightly in a way that I hadn't really understood. I was still treating it like my baby, and not necessarily being very aware of how I needed to communicate the value of the project. I think that was so I would agree it was a key moment.
When people are purpose driven or vision driven like you are, there is always a counter narrative. So you're driven by purpose, but there is one force that is putting you down, and it's the light and the shadow. And I think we all need to be aware of that at one point, because it's when allow you to go to the next level, when you just confront that reality that what you want to give is sometimes what you don't have in a certain level. And we had that discussion that you were community building driven, however, you want to take everything on your shoulders as your responsibility. And when you confront that narrative, the project shifts completely.
Yeah, it did. And then I think it was the sort of, from that point, the sort of questions that you posed to me to really try to get to the core of what the story was. So it was, what is it that you want to achieve with this project? What is the change that you want to see for the visitor, for the individual, for the people that connect with the project? And I had not been viewing it in those terms. I had been viewing it as a physical building and a thing that I had to achieve in terms of a visitor attraction, or and I was explaining it in those terms rather than explaining it in what it was that I was actually trying to do with the project. And that again was a really critical thing for me to understand my own motivations,
Mm-hmm.
and then and as a result be able to define the core values of the project. Yeah.
It's interesting because in purpose-driven and value-driven projects, there are two dynamics: the dynamics of the results and the dynamics of the impact. So one result can be that, yes, you build up something, but the impact is something else.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be even that we can have impact without results. I mean, we can have the same impact maybe without the building, can we? And that type of questions allow us really to go to the core of what you want to do. So the connection is not the thing. As Goka was explaining,
Mm-hmm.
it's not any kind of building. It's a building that is created with meaning and with the core values
Mm-hmm.
behind. So the result is just a result of the intention that you are bringing forward, the purpose, the values, and how you want this result to impact others.
Mm-hmm.
So when you start thinking in terms of impact, the possibilities of the project open up. And it's the same dynamic that we see between purpose and profit, results and impact. It's a kind of dialogue, and it's a balance that we need to bring in order to make purpose-driven businesses or projects to come to life.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think then once we focused on the impact that we wanted the project to have, and the core values of the project, and sort of used that to then lead our fundraising campaign, everything changed.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost easy once we had laid out and led from that point. It was that idea of, okay, so this is about community empowerment. So if it's about community empowerment, how do we put the structures in place in order to allow that to happen, and communicate that as well? If it's about experience for all, how can we start to create experiences for people to connect with that idea whilst being community driven? And if it's about making a change for our environment, how do we connect those ideas to motivate our community behind this project? So I think that getting to that point was an amazing way to structure a fundraising campaign. And I kind of want to get your thoughts on how you felt that fundraising campaign then worked.
For me, there was a lot of question of trust too, in that the story was resonating with people because you had that. So how do you give a space for the people to lead that story? Because when you start asking for money, it's a different type of conversation. But I think that what we did was starting from another point, is that people want to see that change. They want to lead that because the story is about making change, is connect with our beautiful coastline in Aberdeen, and also make a change and be part of it, So how do we allow people to step into that possibility that they can be drivers, and that they will, because they want to be part of this story? So allowing that, I think, changed completely how we were thinking about fundraising, which, yes, I mean, we need to get such amount of money, in order to continue the project. But it was more about how can we ask people to step in as leaders. They want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They bought this into this story. They want to be part of this story because they believe that we can make a change in the city. Yeah. So let's create that space for them to lead this and to be owners of that story, to feel that they belong to that story.
Yeah, and I think that was the incredible, powerful thing that then occurred, was that absolutely the community stepped into that. And it was almost hard to necessarily predict what that would mean for the project, but it was that sense of ownership, it was that sense of community, but it was also how they started to shape the way that we were delivering both the fundraising and our programs, and how they were influenced by some of our messaging that they were totally, being educated, but then embodying and communicating to a wider audience. So they've really been the ones that have sort of owned the message and communicated it in a way that we could never have been able to achieve on our own. I think that for me was quite a moment as well in terms of understanding the power of this project, and really how we could unleash it, maybe is the word. Yeah.
Because it's not anymore your story, it's the story of us. Yeah. It becomes something that everybody belongs to and feel that they are involved in a different level. So, which is more powerful than money. And we discussed that. I mean, how much? I mean, yes. I mean, do you want just one person to give 1 million? I remember that we had this conversation. Bill Gates, come in and say, "Okay, we give you all the money that you want, and you just do it." But that wouldn't be that powerful as having a community behind building up for the type of project. I mean, for other projects, maybe it's not what you need, but for this project, because of the story that you wanted to tell, the power was not exactly on getting the money, it's how you were getting this money, how you were involved in the community, making feel that this is with them, for them, all together.
Yeah, as we did and we delivered and just were who we were, then the value was clear to the funders at that level as well. So it was quite interesting, the dynamic shift.
It's the authenticity too.
Yes.
Because people see that that's an authentic story.
Yeah, and I think again, working with you, Natalia, we work quite closely together, and regularly, and so I think you're always quite good at making sure that as we continue and as we take each step forward, that we're still rooting in the core authenticity of the story that we're trying to tell, and because it can be difficult to, when you get excited by influences and excited by opportunities, to make sure that just to kind of check in with yourself, is this in line with what we're trying to achieve? Is this in line with how we want to communicate this project? And I think that's another value that you have provided in the way that we've worked together over the last few years, is making sure that we are staying true to those values in everything that we do, from an email that we might send out, to a campaign that we design, to videos like this. So yeah, it's quite a critical role you played in that way.
I think the nature of the project that you're leading, Fiona, is also that you start with a vision. You saw something. Suddenly it was like, like a revelation. That I remember our first conversation and how I was like excited about what you saw and what you wanted to deliver. But building up from there, when you realize that it's not just a building what you want to do, you need to understand what are the pillars of the story, what are the elements that make this project alive in a way that people can feel it. Because the building is just bricks, and Goka has talked, a lot about that. And so a good architect, what he does or what she does is just bring a building alive. The meaning, the values, the sense of wanted, a home, a church, whatever it is, And so understanding that there was something else, this something else is what you need to hold on, because there are going to be a lot of temptations to deliver results. So what have you done? Oh, I done this, and that. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
But is this delivering into the impact that you want to do? Is just this building reflecting? Is this movement? Is this money? Is this people who are supporting you understanding what you're standing for? Because at one point it will crash down
Mm-hmm.
in a way or another. So being really very clear about your intentions and the story that you want to bring, and being surrounded by the right people and the right support, and let them eventually lead as you did in the fundraising campaign, because it's a dialogue. It's not your story anymore. It becomes a story of many others that are come here and say, I believe in you. I believe in your vision. I believe in these three elements of what you're trying to say and what you're trying to bring. I want to be part of this, and I have an idea.
Yeah. And
So
we,
generosity, that implies into listening and give them a space and trust. And sometimes you need to say, well, yes or no. Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of balance and dialogue. It's not that the limits that all imply, but for me, when a story starts developing in this way, it becomes a very interesting project also in terms of leadership, as you know, and how you just bring people on board from a different perspective. Not that I want you to do that, but how do you see this story growing? How do you want to join us? What can you do to bring that vision alive? It's a different type of question.
yeah, it is, and it's beautiful, and it's an exciting way to keep moving forward as well, because it shares the energy of the project. So it's not reliant on one leader or one individual or one organization either. It can shift and move and change with the different individuals and organizations and communities that get involved with the project, all with a good steering position from Grey Hope Bay. But that's quite an interesting thing. I think it brings a certain level of resilience into the project in terms of its how it will last for the future, and how it will always provide what the community needs in each moment.
I think it takes patience, and that when you work with purpose-driven projects, value-driven vision, it's not a direct line. And so we have this type of industrial mindset in which everything needs to go step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But when you're purpose driven and when you want to deliver a story like this, it's not going to go in a straight line, because there is a purpose, there are values, there are people around that you want to bring on board. And many times you need to go on that way in order to go there. And it doesn't look like what we would like to say about success, like done like this. I mean, all the funding, everything, like in 6 months is a great idea. Everybody just was on board, and it doesn't work like that. And so the deeper you go, I found that sometimes it takes time, and we lack patience, maybe. And we think that we can do shortcuts. And I think this is a good example that no, it doesn't work. You work extremely hard for many years in order to build up this story and the community, and you nearly, at one point, thought that that was it, that there was nothing that could be done. But you did it, but it goes like this. It takes time, and a lot of courage and trust, and saying, I'm not just going to go for quick money or for quick results and delivery to show that I can do it, because that's not the story I want to tell. And balancing that is difficult. It's difficult for all of us, but I think it's resilience, and I think it's courage too. And you brought a lot of that.